Question: how do 5 low-cost drones slip 710 miles past $50 million in air defenses in peak winter? You're in the right place. We're breaking down Ukraine's Windweaver Cascade, the plan that turned weather into stealth and physics into a weapon. If Russia trusted winter to be a shield, why did a substation still go dark in seconds? Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. They started with a bet that sounded reckless. 5 cheap airframes against a wall of sensors and missiles worth more than a regional airport. The difference wasn't money. It was what they noticed in the winter map that Russian operators didn't. Border radars sat on predictable masts with known sweep habits. Pantsir S-1 batteries ringed key corridors with overlapping engagement zones. Nebo-M search radars washed the sky with low-frequency energy that found big things far away. And over it all was an airspace Russia trusted to filter out trouble by itself in the cold months, when engines glow hot and metal fails faster. Winter normally stacks the deck for defenders. Denser air lets radar energy travel clean and steady. Ice adds weight, puts joints under stress, and punishes flimsy wings. Thermal contrast goes up, so a warm exhaust stands out against frozen fields like a flare. Short days compress flight windows. Frigid batteries sag. A low flyer spends more time scraping through turbulence and wires. If you have to cross hundreds of miles against that, you plan for the air to hurt you and help your enemy. The math looked fatal on paper. The route ran 710 miles. Each drone carried about 130 pounds of C4, so there was no room to make them bigger or heavier. Fuel margins were thin. Every climb burned time. Every wrong turn pushed them into new radar lobes. The exposure windows stacked: border search, sector handoffs, point defense queues. Range charts said 620 miles at best. That left a gap you can't close with hope. So they pivoted to weather. For 2 weeks, planners pulled satellite wind fields and surface temperature maps and marked the days when fast, low-level streams formed and held. They traced gust corridors that ran like rivers along hedgerows, rail lines, and shallow valleys. If the air moved in your favor at the right height, the range gap shrank. If it moved against you, you were out of fuel before the halfway point. They picked a window when the streams were strongest and lined up behind each other like gears. Flight profile was the other lever. They set altitude near 80 feet above the ground and accepted the risk. At that height, radar energy scatters off rocks, buildings, and trees. Filtering software calls most of it clutter and throws it out. Staying in that mess meant they had to time every rise over obstacles and tighten every turn. They gave up safe clearances to hide inside the noise. They brought an aerosol cloak that worked like a moving mist. It wasn't smoke to the eye. It was haze to a Doppler. The particles scattered and smeared the radar returns, so the motion blended with the background. A sensor that wanted a clean, sharp target saw a fuzzy blob that looked like bad ground echoes. Think of 5 shouts turned into a low hum rolling along a ditch line. Systems near the Earth learn to ignore that hum because it triggers false alarms all day. The first breach told them the idea held. Border radars lost consistent tracks as the formation slid under the noise floor, and the alert loop didn't tighten fast enough to cue a clean intercept. They crossed the line without a steady lock, trading speed for staying power and riding a tailwind that bought them miles for free. Inside that shield, the response changed. Longer range sensors lit up. Batteries shifted to smarter patterns and deeper search volumes. The easy part ended, and the plan needed to adapt mid-flight, because the next sensors would look down, think faster, and punish any mistake in seconds. Winter gives defenders sharper eyes and tougher choices. Heat pops against cold fields, and ice punishes weak parts. So how do you flip that? You make the air itself do the hiding. Windweaver Cascade is a playbook, not a gadget. It ties 3 threads together: weather that moves like a conveyor belt, physics that fools the filters, and AI that nudges the wings every few seconds so the drones stay buried in clutter while the wind does the hauling. Russia responded the way a big network should. Nebo-M widened the wash to catch anything straying above the brush line. Panzer batteries pushed their search cones lower, waiting for a clean cue. An A-50 drifted into the pattern and looked down through the mess, hunting for heat where radar gets noisy. That airborne picture threatened to crush the stealth window, because a thermal spot in sub-zero air is an easy pickoff when you can stare from altitude. The answer was sideways motion. Doppler radars care about how fast you move toward or away from them, not across their face. The drones crabbed into the crosswind, matching the ground drift so their speed relative to the radar collapsed to near zero. On the scope, they blended into the smear that software throws away as static terrain. Once a sweep passed and the gate relaxed, they rolled their noses back onto course and rode the wind lane forward. It wasn't a stunt. It was a sequence, timed to each radar's habit. That timing came from the AI loop. Each airframe pulled down satellite wind updates, read barometric pressure changes for hints of shear, and watched its IMU for minute roll and yaw cues. Every few seconds, the controller trimmed a flap or nudged throttle to stay inside blind habits the radars had learned to ignore. The same logic squeezed more distance from the fuel. With the air doing more of the work, the drag and burn dropped, buying range they didn't have on the chart. Then the heat hunt hit. Pathfinder, the lead, showed the strongest thermal bloom. The A-50 linked a firing solution, and an IR seeker came in hot at Mach 3. Straight outrun was not possible. Pathfinder shed a decoy pod that burned at a tight band around 200 degrees. At the same moment, it pulled engine heat down and tipped into a shallow glide on the tailwind. For a handful of seconds, the drone slid under the seeker's threshold while the decoy looked like the real thing. The missile took the bait and went for the brighter ghost. Pathfinder kept the nose steady, let the wind carry it, and counted down the timing marks baked into the route. When the seeker blew past and detonated on the decoy, the drone reignited, climbed just enough to clear a ridge, and slipped back into the same moving stream. On the A-50's displays, a lost return reappeared where clutter had washed the trail minutes before. That was the break. Radar had filtered them out when their relative speed dropped. Infrared reached for the decoy and spent a shot. The formation held spacing and stayed on its fuel plan. With the net fooled 1 sense at a time, the corridor opened. The strike window needed more than arrival. The attacks lined on a delay that mattered at sub-zero temperatures. Steel turns brittle when the mercury drops. A split-second sequencing puts force inside joints before they can flex, and frozen lines fail hard when they are hit that way. High-end radars, mobile batteries, and a winter sky still cracked when the attackers timed wind, temperature, and autonomy to act as cover. Stealth came from forecasts, gust corridors, cold-soaked steel, and a flight plan that turned filters against themselves. The Veshka substation going dark cost a fraction of one intercepted missile. If you want more breakdowns of tactics that flip cost and power on their heads, subscribe and tell us what system to test next. And watch the energy side. Ukraine's move toward rooftop solar, generators, and batteries shows how resilience spreads. The next fight isn't missiles versus radars. It's forecasts versus assumptions.